Good morning and welcome to Passport to the World with Cathy Retief-Neil. I'm so excited to have one of my favorite guests back in the studio today, and she's going to be transporting us back to, about 3,000 years, I think, to the realm of Queen of Sheba and King Solomon. Good morning, Dawn Jorgensen.
Hi, Cathy. Thank you for having me back.
It's lovely to have you back again. It's been way too long. You've been doing way too much traveling. No, wait a minute. There's no such thing as way too much traveling. But you've been so busy.
I have. Last year was a very busy year with some wonderful adventures. But I think my most recent one is the one that's really touched my heart, and I'm so pleased to be here today to talk to you about it.
Absolutely. I was looking at your video on YouTube, which was beautiful, by the way, and following you on Facebook and other social media, and on your the incidental sorry, Dawn. Incidental tourist.
The incidental tourist, yes. That's still me.
on your blog site. And just following your trip, and I was saying to you before the show, I was fascinated by just how much you saw and did in Ethiopia and experienced, more than anything experienced. It seems to have been an absolutely fascinating, kind of soul-searching journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ethiopia as a destination is still rather unknown. So when I had the invitation from Ethiopian Airlines to join them, not only to learn about this award-winning airline, but to explore and learn more about a country that I knew so little about, it was really a gift. And I've come back feeling like I've been on a bit of a pilgrimage. It's all about, we're talking again about that African travel, the concept of learning more about what is available on our continent, and just how much we actually have to be proud of. And there were so many aspects of Ethiopia that astounded me. Just the diversity of the land, the very rich history. The places that we went to were mostly in the historical, cultural northern regions, and just how it unlocked different aspects of the country's history, the world's history, the strong Orthodox Christian religion that they have there, and then just a country that was never colonized. So there are almost 80 different tribes. There are 200 dialects spoken. Addis Ababa is this vibrant, colorful city that just invites you to want to go in and explore more, and there's a pride among the people and a sense of belonging and knowing that their culture is something very unique and one of the ancient cultures of the world that really gives you something unique from as far as other destinations that I've been to.
Well, it has indeed has a very rich history, of course, and I believe that you'll also find the world's fourth holiest Islamic city there as well. We're talking about Christianity and Orthodox and so on, but it really is an eclectic mix of cultures and religions as well.
It is, and what was so lovely is when our trip now took us into Addis Ababa, which is so easy. I mean, you can fly from Durban, Cape Town, or Johannesburg direct into Addis Ababa on Ethiopian Airlines, which already made it so easy.
Oh, yes.
It's just 6 hours, under 6 hours, and you're there. And Addis is a big city, but the airport was almost in the middle of it. So, we arrived, and within 15 minutes we're at the Friendship Hotel. And I think arriving at a hotel and it's called the Friendship Hotel, and the people are living up to the name. It was really the correct welcome. But from there, just heading north, we went to places that we'll talk about: Gondar, Aksum, Lalibela, which I think is a name that most people would know and associate with Ethiopia. Everywhere you've got the strong Christian influence, but then you've got mosques, and the call to prayer is coming both from the Orthodox Christian churches as well as from the mosque down the road. There's a very strong connection to Judaism, with the Queen of Sheba being the mother of a lot of the Jews, or the Ethiopian Jews. And so you just have this coexistence, and it's completely charming and working well as people go about their business.
Sounds amazing. I was going to be flippant to Dawn and ask you whether you went on a search for King Solomon's mines.
We didn't, but we did go on a search for the ruins of Queen Sheba's home.
Far more exciting.
That was just as exciting. No real treasures of the gold variety, but definitely of the heart and travel variety.
You obviously had a really, I was looking at your itinerary, very, very interesting indeed. And what I like about it is it's one of those, we can almost call it an in-depth experience. It's not just flitting from one historic building to the other. It was it was sort of a holistic experience, was it not?
It definitely was. And, I think that what I wasn't aware of is how big Ethiopia is. The fact that it's, once you're there, you cannot just imagine that you can see Ethiopia in a week. We really needed to decide what area we were going to focus on. In the south, you have the active volcano, you've got lake regions, you've got a wonderful mix of cultures that are very interesting that you might want to look at. But we couldn't combine that with the north. That's kind of has to be saved for another visit. So in the north, we made this focus about a look at, I suppose, the land of origins, which is what their tourism body calls them. They are the land of origins. They have, and so as I say, we went to Gondar. Gondar is home to a 7-hectare piece of land that is just covered in ruins and remains of 17th century castles, which just show the opulent living of the kings and the aristocracy at that time. And it's beautifully preserved, and our guide could take us through how life was at that point. And the corner of each of this compound, as they call it, is a church, and how they would practice their religion there, but live in these very grand castles, the kind of thing you would not be surprised to find in Europe, but we were quite astounded to find of this proportion, in this little village, Gondar. So, we had that kind of insight into this civilization, which is almost underrated. I think what I saw in Ethiopia, you can expect to see possibly in Turkey or in Egypt or in Greece. And Ethiopia is one of those ancient civilizations with incredibly integral roots, I think, in human civilization.
Well, I was just reading about you were talking about going back about 3,000 years or something, but you were mentioning that, and they were talking here, did some research about medieval rock-hewn churches, and that's Lalibela that you mentioned, and of course their ruined palaces and temples, also dating back 3,000 years, and 17th century castles of Gondar you've mentioned. And the other thing, the oldest human fossils unearthed anywhere on the planet were found in Ethiopia.
Yeah, Lucy, she's called.
Lucy, we all know. I love Lucy.
We all love Lucy. So the capital. Firstly, I have to say that as much as we love Lucy and having the option of visiting the museum in Addis and walking through with the guide, they're very well equipped paleontology area. They have Lucy, who dates back 3.2 million years, and then the oldest fossil of a child, which is really in very good condition, a tiny little child, I think a female child, dating back 3.3 million years.
Wow.
So there is this notion that all mankind and our DNA will take us back to this region of the world, which I think as Africans can make us quite proud that
well, I think it's pretty much accepted. Yeah, I think
Yes.
it's accepted nowadays with all the studies and all the research and the scientists saying that, mankind seems to have, it seems that we are the cradle of humankind. It all comes from Africa.
And then I have to say that on the back of that, Ethiopia also gave us the gift of coffee. And I think that's what keeps mankind going. So, if you look at Ethiopia as a nation and what they've brought to the world, there's obviously all this history, and we're going to speak about, Lalibela and other places, but, Ethiopia is where coffee was first was first made and enjoyed. And
Not in Brazil.
No, definitely not in Brazil. And I love that when you buy your coffee there, they have these little slogans that say things like Ethiopia's gift to the world. And I think every morning I can say a little ode to that, because I'm most grateful that that gift has been given to us.
Absolutely. Well, take us a little bit further on your journey. I'm not going to interrupt you too much because I'm so fascinated by your itinerary. I did a little bit of research, and knowing you, you're such a marvelous storyteller, Dawn. I thought I'm going to sit back and enjoy my trip through Ethiopia with you.
Well, I think I'll just take you through the routing. I mean, Gondar, firstly, with Ethiopian Airways, its airlines, it's so easy because you can fly to all of their internal airports. So they are servicing over 20 routes. So you literally just go to the Addis airport and they have these little hops, say 30 or 45 minutes. And they've established a circular route to make it easier for tourists to get around, which is really very helpful. So, once you're in Addis, you just hop on, and sometimes we landed and then we went on to Gondar in the first instance. And what I found so surprising about Ethiopia is, unfortunately, I think many of us still have this idea that it is a famine-struck land, even though that was 20, 30 years ago. But it is so green and very, very mountainous. So when you look out of the window from the plane, you just see these beautiful mountains covered in green for as far as the eye can see. They have Lake Tana, which dominates a large portion of the northern landscape, and it has islands on it and a ferry that crosses it. You have the Rift Valley, which is something that is crossing Africa, and so it has the Semien Mountains, which are home to really endangered animals like the Ethiopian wolf. So anything that you want on your trip to Ethiopia, you would be able to find. I mean, they're so renowned for their athletes, and they're now having annual marathons where you can actually go and take part in a marathon in the area where the athletes do most of their training and run alongside some of the top Ethiopian athletes. So I think from a tourism perspective, it's really going to astound you and give you what you want, whether it's activity, food. We're going to talk about food in more detail, whether it is that history and culture, shopping. I mean, I have to say, when I think Ethiopian, I'm going to think shopping, which is not a natural thing that'll happen in your mind, but the most beautiful hand-woven scarves and jewelry and crosses. So really, this as a destination, as a country that I think is going to please anyone who visits. Me, for this trip, I felt like it was an absolute pilgrimage for me personally, after lots of travel and just at the phase that I'm at in my life, to go to places that were like, it was like a foundation of where we come from. Gondar, just walking the streets, for taxis, they have tuk-tuks everywhere, and these little cars that are racing around. But the streets are very wide; they're not congested, and the towns are quite small. The school kids are in and out, and just happy, friendly people. I think that we don't want to get too much into the politics of the country, but I find that you can immediately tell a difference in the Ethiopian people. They've never been suppressed by a European nation.
Probably never colonized.
They've never been colonized, and I honestly feel that gives them an edge, because they've never been anything but proud of their heritage, of their diversity, of their culture.
They've been allowed to be themselves.
They are themselves. They have their languages. They have their currency. I mean, Addis is the capital of the African Union. It's got probably one of the highest rates of consulates and embassies in the world. And you really feel that on the air. And anyway, so I keep digressing, but Gondar was really a wonderful start to looking and seeing what the history and the castles, and just a little bit of insight into how early day Ethiopians lived with their kings and with the opulent lifestyle that you would expect of royalty.
Absolutely. And the one thing that really has to be mentioned, Dawn, and that is that there is a 0% crime rate in Ethiopia.
There is. And, that's another thing.
Incredible. What country can lay claim to something like that?
Not ours, I'm afraid. But, 0%, I'm not saying that if you leave your camera on a coffee table and, walk away and come back that you aren't taking a chance. But there really is no crime. There's just this welcome attitude. I think the only thing that you might find is a lot of very enthusiastic children trying to sell you crosses or jewelry or, fabrics. But then you realize that, that's how they make their living. And there are tourism of the kind that we know is quite new to Ethiopia. Their tourism board is just over 3 years old, and they're doing astounding work in bringing us all of these stories and regions. But they also are all about sustainable and responsible tourism. That is their focus. They have a lot of heritage there that has been preserved for thousands of years. And what I found incredibly impressive when we met with the tourism, the Ethiopian tourism people, is that even though they need to grow tourism, want to grow tourism, it will only be done on a sustainable and responsible level. So I think one of the challenges that they're facing is that these children are maybe seeing tourists and associating us with the fact that we're going to want to buy those beautiful items that they're selling, and then just trying to keep the balance between that and, not anyone taking advantage of
a country after your own heart.
Definitely. It's one of the greenest airlines in the world. It's got one of the greenest policies in the world as far as tourism goes. And just preserving their ethos as a proud nation.
And of course, if we add to that, Dawn, the fact that the sponsor of Passport to the World is equally eco-conscious when it comes to, conscientious tourism throughout the world, and that is a policy of Trafalgar's as well. It
definitely is, and I think that this is something that I learn more and more, and it's really been one of my greatest lessons in the path. My blog is 7 years old. Yesterday it was 7 years since I started my blog, The Incidental Tourist, and if anything, my greatest lesson has been that you can travel responsibly. You can seek out destinations and companies like Trafalgar, Ethiopian Airlines, and just places that are they're going beyond what what is expected to really focus on community, have the greenest airplanes that they can have, or really just work in the most responsible way. And
absolutely. And conscientious travel includes respectful travel.
That's right. And it's about us. We need to make the choice. We could go anywhere and we can do it anyway, but we want to be conscious travelers. And I think in Ethiopia, I really felt that all of my senses and my entire consciousness was just completely sated with the different flavors and experiences that we were having. So, as you say, country after my heart.
So tell us a little bit more about your journey. It seems you stayed in some wonderful places, and you're going to take us to them. We do have some time left, but okay. You were also going to talk about the food, and of course the fact that are you supposed to eat with your hands?
You do.
In Ethiopia, but you're not supposed to only with your left hand?
Only with your right hand.
With your right hand. Oh,
so the food in Ethiopia is completely unique, like so many of the things that the country offers. And I think that one of the things that you will just see everywhere is injera, which is a very big, sort of 30 centimeter in diameter sourdough flatbread.
So this is what you use
and
as a fork
rolled
or a spoon.
up. We actually had a couple of giggles because when it's all rolled up, it looks a little bit like those wet towels you get on safari. We were like, anyone for a wet towel? But so you get that, and all over where the places that we went, you have the option on the menu of ordering something more traditional, like a chicken or a fish or a soup. They have the most beautiful soups, which also amazed me. Soup is really something that Ethiopia does really well. Or you have the traditional meals, which I really like that. And some countries, even Cape Town, everything is so Eurocentric that it's quite hard to find African food. So they've really got that down. And when you order it, you get your injera all rolled up, or you get the food put out there, and there's lots of vegetarian dishes and spicy meat dishes, and you use your right hand, you take a little bit of injera, you wrap it around sort of a morsel. We weren't getting the morsel down right, so we were stuffing these big chunks of everything into our mouths, but they so graciously just wrap a little bit around and use only their right hands, and that is how they eat, and you're invited to eat with your hands anyway. And food is we went on the last night in Addis to a traditional restaurant where we had a buffet, and it was just like never ending incredible dishes, and quite spicy ones, veggie ones, different meat dishes, and then lots of cottage cheese with different flavors which they're making, and just completely delicious food, and honey wine, which does give you the edge,
because it's a pretty non-alcoholic country, isn't it?
Yeah. There's a great local beer which we are guilty of drinking at every lunchtime, or not guilty. We just indulged when in Ethiopia. But we did have honey wine in the last night, and it does put a little bit of a glow on your cheeks.
It's the honey, Dawn. It's the honey.
Definitely, honey must be good for you. So I was defined as a vegetarian, that it's incredibly easy to travel in Ethiopia because the Orthodox Christians, and 80% of the population are Orthodox Christians, actually fast on a Wednesday and a Friday, in that they eat no animal products on those 2 days. So on those 2 days, everything is vegan, but those items appear anyway on the menu. Mm-hmm. So you can order vegan dishes, and it's very easy. And they have a wonderful understanding of vegetarian or vegan food, which a lot of countries can be a struggle in.
Absolutely.
So just that too. I think I don't want to not speak about these beautiful places I've been to. I think one of the other places that, one of the things that I need to say about even the churches in Gondar, but all the churches that we went into, is how Ethiopia seems to have a distinct style of art, and the paintings and the murals that are on the walls and the ceilings are done. They're bold. The colors are bright. You're in churches that are hundreds of years old, and they're preserved. And one of the churches that we went to in Gondar, when we looked up, it was just like a little mosaic, little faces painted of, I actually put a picture on my Instagram, faces of Jesus facing every direction, and really giving the message that wherever we are, whichever way we're going or whatever we're facing in our lives, he will be there. So you've got to look up, you've got to look beyond you. You've got just these incredible images of, the angels. There are these 3 angels that you seem to find everywhere, and even their Bibles. We in the one church in Aksum, which was the next town we went to, we visited one of the most holy places in the world. It's Aksum is where the Ark of the Covenant is meant to be kept, or is believed to be kept, and we visited the church that has been built for worship next to the building where the ark is. It only comes out once a year for a big ceremony. It's guarded by a monk and 4 guards. We did catch a glimpse of him, but he wasn't too keen on speaking to us, so we left it at that. But even in that church, massive proportion, and people just completely dedicated. And there we were so lucky because one of the priests actually took us to a Bible, and he showed us that this big, massive handwritten Bible, hand illustrated, and they are reading 3 pages a day. The priests generally read 3 pages a day, and if they do that, then over a period of a year, they will read the entire Bible.
Oh, very special.
And they're just, because they spend a lot of time at prayer, they have things like prayer sticks. So you can actually, these tall sticks, they look almost like something that a shepherd would use to pull his little lonely lamb back. And, you know, they have them that they can lean on or put under their chin or put under their arm. And those are all around. You have these drums that are also part of the music. And for many centuries, music was associated with prayer and with the church and with Orthodox Christianity. I mean, now it is more widely used. But, you know, even there visiting the church museum and just seeing the, you know, the beauty of the clothes that were worn, the intricate, you know, gold inlays. This is a country that we can actually learn so much from, and their culture. And I don't want to take anything away from by saying this, but you know, Africa has so much to offer. And standing in Ethiopia, I mean, I could have been in Rome, I could have been in a church anywhere in Europe, and I felt that it was a very good reminder that we don't have to leave our continent to learn about our whether it's our religion or our origin or our culture. And I felt an immense sense of pride that Africa has this incredibly significant history and tradition, and that it's being so beautifully preserved by the country.
It'd be wonderful. It was the same throughout Africa, but unfortunately it's not. But
No.
it's certainly wonderful to hear that, you know, this is a place that you can visit and really feel a sense of belonging, which you don't always feel when you're traveling through Africa.
That's
Let's be
true.
honest about that.
Yes.
Right, we have a couple of minutes left, Dawn.
Okay, so I think we have to talk about Aksum briefly and then Lalibela. Aksum was the capital of Ethiopia, and just to me is the most picturesque village. And I say that from a completely different perspective. Not only does it have a lot of history and hold the Ark of the Covenant, but it's got these wide streets and it's right on the Eritrea border, and you just see donkeys walking down the road and camels with wood on their backs that seem to know where to go. And you just get the sense that you're kind of touching on Arabia, although you're right there among the churches and the mosques and even the Jewish community. But all the buildings are kind of pastels, blues and yellows and oranges, and kids playing, you know, football on the streets. And it just was so beautiful, all around a square with this big tree in the middle and lots of traders. And I mean, that was just a place that you just want to photograph of always. And then from there we went on to Lalibela, and I think if you do anything, you need to go to Lalibela when you are planning your trip to Ethiopia. Home to 11 churches that have been carved out of the rock. So you can't, as you approach, firstly, it's incredibly mountainous. You take this mountainous, windy road, and we settled into a beautiful hotel and then made our way to the first. And they're in two areas. There are 7 on the one side and 4 on the other. And just, you can't see them from the top because they were carved down and they were carved into the mountain or into the side of the mountain and are completely intricate. They carved down, they made drainage systems, and then each church is as though it were built from brick and mortar on a street. Inside it has the arches, it has the enclaves, it's got windows that have intricate carvings of maybe crosses, and inside they've got carpets. It's just actually, and paintings. So we walked through those. They obviously, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Some of them have been preserved more than others. And then the most famous of them is St. George's, when as you approach, you just see the cross from the top, just in this rock, and then you walk down and into that. So,
it's quite surreal.
It was completely surreal. Actually, traveling in a group, there were some photos taken of me. You have to be very modest, cover your head, as you walk through. And I think that there are probably of the most serene photos of me that I've seen, because I was just completely taken with the whole place and the significance of it. They were crafted under King Lalibela. He apparently had a vision in a dream. He used thousands of men and artisans. They were paid. They were no slaves. And it took them 23 years and 6 months working around the clock. And it is said with the help of the angels, which when you stand there, you have to believe is true, because you can't imagine that they could be man-made. And they are.
Unbelievable. Dawn, I think you need to give us your website, because I hope we can read up more about your journey on the incidental tourist. I know you've been terribly busy, but I hope that we're going to be able to read this after having listening today. You've painted such a vivid picture of your journey, and it really sounds like almost a spiritual experience. And you are looking so serene, so I'm assuming you are feeling very serene.
Thank you, Cathy. I am. I think that standing, being at Lalibela, actually, there was a moment where I stopped and thought, okay, it was almost like a new me. So it definitely is a spiritual experience. And I will be writing up about it a lot on my blog, as well as for a couple of other publications. But I'm at theincidentaltourist.com. And then I've got a lot of photos on Instagram. And there is actually a hashtag, which is ETFAM17. So if anyone goes onto Instagram and clicks on that, they will get all the photos of everyone that was in our group, which will just give a wider picture and also other people's perspectives. And I'm sure that they're all going to be as good as and heartfelt as mine.
Well, I'm sure. Well, Dawn, thank you so much for coming in this morning. It's always lovely to have you on the show, and I hope it won't be another year before we have you here. I want to wish you many more months and weeks and years of happy travel, but not months and weeks and years before you come back into the studio and tell us about your journeys, because you're a wonderful storyteller, and that comes from your passion.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope to be back with more soon. Thank you, Cathy.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed our chat to Dawn Jorgensen this morning, and that you will join us again same time next week on Passport to the World. Until then, happy travels.
Passport to the World was proudly sponsored by Trafalgar. Simply the best way to holiday. Imagine a place where robots are traffic lights, biltong becomes Bresaula, and braais are, well, different. We're proud of our South African origins, and having grown over 70 years to become the world leader in guided travel, we're excited to share our European knowledge and expertise with you. And we've got a lekker deal for you too. Save 7.5% and get 1,000 Rand off your airfare. What are you waiting for? Visit trafalgar.com or call 011 280 8440 to speak to a specialist consultant, or talk to your agent and get your European adventure underway. T's and C's apply.